Over the past years, scientists and researchers have come up with ideas for how climate changes have affected areas due to natural and unnatural causes. But are these issues from what has happened in the past hundreds of years, or climate change over time? The research we have done goes even further back, and from the ancient times that we have focused on in this class, we chose differential climate change in ancient Mesopotamia as our main focus, mainly in the Fertile Crescent, known as the cradle of civilization. The Fertile Crescent is regarded as the birthplace of agriculture, urbanization, writing, trade, science, history, and organized religion. Civilization in the Fertile Crescent was first dated back to 10,000 BCE, when agriculture and the domestication of animals began in this region. But could these factors lead to a massive change in global environment? The Fertile Crescent has experienced a vast range of diverse climates. These major climatic changes encouraged the evolution of many R-type annual plants, which produce more edible seeds than K-type perennial plants. The region's dramatic variety of elevation gave rise to many species of edible plants for early experiments in cultivation. Also going along with cultivation and agriculture, researchers must consider the vast varieties of planting that the Mesopotamians did at this time. The Mesopotamians had two main crops, wheat and barley. These two crops could withstand the salty waters of the Tigris and Euphrates. These plants react well to the chemical reaction that changes the soil's mineral content. When the water would sit in holding ponds and standing irrigation, the soil would deposit salt from the mineral-rich land. But Sumerian farmers had an idea to conquer the salt by weed fallowing, which would lower the weeds and salt under the topsoil and lower the water table, resulting in loss of water for the community. But with the absence of this process, the land could go toxic, so they would have to abandon the land for 50 plus years. So considering this, we can think of all the disasters that follow. For instance, pollution. When water is evaporated and goes back into the atmosphere, the rain becomes more acidic and pollutes the land and plants, but also increases temperatures.
Over time, this population could affect the snow-capped mountains, Taurus, Pontus, and Zagros, that supply water from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers were. These mountains supplied water to all of the Fertile Crescent, and with the rising temperatures, snow output on mountains would reduce and the waterways would rise for a short time due to the melting of the snow. But over time, the waterways would evaporate, and for a short time it would become a flooding hazard, and eventually dissipate every year due to the evaporation and usage of the rivers. In experimental studies, botanists have collected seeds doing what hunters and gatherers would have been doing and collecting 10,000 years ago. The data showed that annual harvests of up to about a ton of seeds per hectare could be obtained. This means that 50 kilocalories of food energy for only 1 kilocalorie of work exerted. Also, another study done analyzed grains of barley from up to 12,000 years ago. They chose these samples because they were certain the grains had enough water to grow and ripen, and also still leave enough analytical data. So looking into the grains, there were two C12 and C13 isotopes that can remain for thousands of years and can be measured. Scientists found that some samples were affected by the many droughts throughout the time, and also their undisclosed climate fluctuations. People then started migrating to this particular spot and cultivating these crops. However, the problem with this is that the natural systems of the seed dispersal and germination quickly changed when cultivation started. The Fertile Crescent contained a high percentage of plants that have the ability to pollinate themselves, however, sometimes cross-pollinated, which was convenient for farmers. The occasional cross-pollination, however, did happen and created hybrid plants, wheat included. Wheat became the most valuable crop in the modern world.
Also considering the climate change effects in many parts of the world, we also have to think about the geological breakup of land and new formations of land, because of civilizations living in changing areas. Over a certain series of years, you can see differences in patterns of land shifts. Between 4000 BC and about 3000 BC, we can see the formation of canals that would eventually, in years, become the Tigris and Euphrates. The land is very arid, the mountains are very rigid, and the chemical erosion of rivers and mountains led to a new chapter. Between 3000 BC and 2700 BC, you can see the formation of large river basins, a lesser land, silt and sand from planting, and the potential use for irrigation is a possibility. But a flood as well. We can see some mountain decay due to natural disasters, rains and the movement of groundwater and land, and the shifting of waterways push more soil, silt, and land to the river. We have learned that there was a great flood due to the vast amount of water pouring from the hills and the mountains due to temperature change, the geography of the new landscapes of Mesopotamia. We can recognize new diversions in the river to new streams from where the flood came from and damaged cities. And also at the flood, where we see new shifts of land such as hills and islands in the rivers due to deposits from the damage of land piling up, and the formations of mountains and lesser snow-capped mountains, also the land geography from the lands of the arid environment to grassy toxic natural environments. Overall, climate change has been pressuring the world for thousands of years. It has not just been these common occurrences that we know of today. As ancient Sumerians and others faced a long and brutal time of climate change, they didn't recognize the damage being done from drought, saltification, and solidification. Even data from soil deposits that we find shows all the other undisclosed climate fluctuations that they faced during their lifetimes. These factors are what contributed to the downfall of civilization in ancient Mesopotamia.